Hey everyone, how's it going? Here to bring you an unscheduled broadcast. It's fresh off the boat, the latest, the next most wanted list coming into effect at the end of this week. So, just to get you the scoops while they're hot, we'll be doing a very brief discussion on what this new most wanted list brings. I will be trying, since the most wanted list is obviously meant for the competitive scene, since it's geared at tournaments, I'll be approaching this from the perspective of a competitive player, or at least what's left of me as a competitive player. So let's get going with the only newly banned card in this iteration of the most wanted list compared to the previous most wanted list 2.0. Violet level clearance immediately ascended from not being on the most wanted list to being completely banned. Newly restricted from not appearing in the most wanted list at all, we have 4 new additions on the restricted side of things: Brain Rewiring, Mother Goddess, Wampoa Reclamation, and Tapworm. We'll first discuss Violet level clearance along with Brain Rewiring and Mother Goddess, because these 3 seem to very clearly target a very specific archetype in Cerebral Imaging Brain Rewiring combo. Now this is a deck that has people shuddered and scared at Worlds last year. It was a deck that everyone had to prepare for, and it warped the meta so much that people brought along cards like Yerong New Milks, and even the runner-up actually had Heartbeat in the deck just to counter Brain Rewiring CI. So like half the people played, I made up the number, but a lot of people played Information Sifting. So this just goes to show how powerful an archetype it was, and this is why these cards were targeted. Now, it was very obvious from Worlds that something needed to be done to neuter CI's power, and particularly the Brain Rewiring combo deck. The question is, what do you target? There were 2 options in my opinion. You could either ban Cerebral Imaging as an identity, or put both clearances on the list, the Violet and the Ultraviolet level clearance, because those were the powerful ones. In retrospect, I think what the game designers did here was a very acceptable compromise, and in fact I think probably better than either of my suggestions. Violet level clearance is a very easy ban, even though it's not the root of the problem in the sense that it's technically CI's ability that allows you to hold all the combo cards in your hand. Violet level clearance is, as I explained in my review video when it was first released, far too efficient for what it does. A baseline card gives you, an anonymous tip, for example, gives you 3 cards for a click. This one gives you an additional card and gives you 3 more credits to boot. It's so good. And not only does it take CI down a notch, it also lowers the power level of Ginger City Grid, which was recently released. So instead of targeting Ginger Grid, which is a powerful card in its own right, why not take down one of its support cards as well? To kill 2 birds with 1 stone by kicking out a card that is just way over the power curve. I can definitely get behind this move, and I like it being banned for this reason. Now, regarding restricting Mother Goddess and Rewiring, this seems like a very niche thing to do. Why not just restrict or even ban CI instead? Well, I think these 2 cards aren't very good for the game, and it's probably good for the better that they are put on the restricted list, because they do pretty nasty things. Fundamentally, Mother Goddess is a problematic card because it locks out a server entirely if the runner does not have any AI breakers and does not have one of those rather niche ice bypassing mechanisms like security nixes or those criminal tools. So it feels like, sure, you can have ice in the game that punishes runners for not packing AI breakers. We've seen a bunch of that, like the Jinteki Trap Ice, or maybe Special Offer from NBN. But the runners should not be locked out completely from servers just because they didn't pack an AI breaker. And Mother Goddess makes this really bad, because when it was first released it was still okay, but once Loki came into the picture as well, that's when things got really ugly, because suddenly Corps can now defend 2 servers from non-AI runners instead of 1, and this means they can seal up the 2 most important servers, HQ and R&D, for a deck like Brain Rewiring CI that does not need a remote to win the game. So this is where things got really pushed off the edge, and this is why I can definitely get behind Mother Goddess being on the restricted list. As for Brain Rewiring, it just screams to me as a card that should never have been printed in the first place. This is one of those classic cards that are completely, utterly worthless when used normally and fairly, but is utterly, completely broken if someone manages to find a way to exploit and abuse it. It's very polarizing, and it's these kind of cards, it gets lumped in the same group as cards like load testing. You know, cards that are just they are just designed to be abused. Cards that are literally almost worthless in the regular decks. So these kind of cards I really don't like, and this is why I'm pretty happy to see Rewiring on the restricted list as well. All in all, I think they did a pretty good job of neutering CI. Sure, there will still be some powerful CI decks out there. I expect people will be running Anonymous Tip instead of Violet level clearance. So yeah, don't expect it to be completely gone, but at least it was taken down a notch or two, and it won't be like the dominant deck in the upcoming meta, hopefully. Now, what about Whampoa Reclamation? This is a card that has been around for some time as well, and to many people, you might look at it and say, hey, no matter which corp you're playing, you still have to fork out 2 influence each for each copy of this. So, isn't that punishing enough? Well, there are several reasons why Whampoa deserves its spot on the most wanted list. Firstly, there is very little possible runner counterplay. Whether it's in-game gameplay, you know, no matter how well you play, or whether it's by tuning your decks, there's really not much you can do against this, because, simply put, there's no solution in the runner card pool that allows you to disrupt the corp's R&D or to access from the bottom. The only exception obviously being Showing Off, a very niche solution. Otherwise, ever since Keyhole rotated, there's no way to, you know, access those agendas that were buried with Whampoa, which is pretty bad because, you know, while it's okay to bury agendas as the corp, I guess, but it drags out the game, and this encourages the worst type of corp play, which is to ignore agendas completely and instead tunnel vision on, you know, the alternative, what is supposed to be an alternative victory condition in the form of milling or killing the runner. I think one thing that really pushed Whampoa to a high power level is its interaction with Shannon Claire. For those of you unfamiliar with the combo, you can put a card from Archives into the bottom of your deck and then draw it with Shannon Claire. This potentially allows you to play that said card an infinite number of times, so long as you're able to keep both Whampoa and Shannon Claire alive on the table. Even if they are trashed by the runner, you can still recur them. There are other ways in your deck in which you can recur them, such as duplicate Whampoas, archive memories, and so on. So basically, it's a pseudo clone suffrage movement. And given that that card is on the banned list, I think this deserves, at the very least, a spot on the restricted list. I'm pretty happy with it going on the list as well. And what about our best friend, the meme that didn't live long enough, Senior Taps? Well, at least it wasn't banned, so we might still see a bit of it. But being on the restricted list, along with some other powerful economy cards, well, it's going to be hard to justify a spot for this. It is a very powerful economy card in itself, in the fact that, just like Aesop's Pawn Shop, you do not need clicks to trigger this. This gives you drip economy over the course of the game, and it's very powerful at that. The biggest problem with Tapworm, in my opinion, is that it was specially designed to be balanced because of the fact that the runner can trash it by spending 3 clicks. It's still a loss for the corp to spend 3 clicks to trash something that was installed for 1 click, but hey, at least, you know, it's a small tempo gain in the favor of the runner. Now imagine the same runner playing 3 sacrificial constructs in their deck. Suddenly, to get rid of this Tapworm, the corp has to spend 12 clicks, or basically concede fabulous economy to the runner for the rest of the game. And I mean fabulous economy. All the corp needs to do is to maintain 10 plus credits every turn, and it's suddenly as good as a Blue Moose. Again, another card on the ban list for a reason. So really, the question then boils down to, do we put Satcon or Tapworm on the restricted list? And that's a very good question. Prior to this list coming out, I would have leaned towards Sacrificial Construct, for the very reason that the existence of Sacrificial Construct still limits future design of Trash on Purge viruses. Imagine if they print a powerful, you know, version of something like Clot 2.0 or something like, you know, a medium that gets trashed on purge. Now, if you can protect it with Sacrificial Construct, these cards can become a lot more powerful than the designer originally intended it to. So I think this is the main problem, alongside the fact that Criminal right now is in a weak position and could definitely use some in-faction economy in the form of Tapworm. So those are the reasons why I felt SacCon would have been a better choice. But there are still good reasons for putting Tapworm on instead. As mentioned before, some of the more powerful cards on the most wanted list currently are the economy cards. I'm looking at you, Magnum Opus and Aesops. So having another friend to join them is pretty interesting in the sense that as the runner, when you're building your deck and you have a restricted slot that's still not taken up, you can go most wanted list shopping. Do you go for Aesops, Mopus, or Tapworm? You know, you can choose one of these. They are all economy cards, they all help your deck, and I guess that's a nice way, a standardized way to build your deck, which is pretty cool. But otherwise, yeah, at least the Tapworm SacCon combo definitely needed addressing in the most wanted list, and this was, I guess, an adequate way of doing so. There are some arguments for putting Peace in Our Time or Game Loss in Your Time instead of Tapworm on the list as well. I won't get into that. That is possibly a good idea as well. Now, with all the cards that are going on the most wanted list, there are some that have been taken down a notch. Rumour Mill and Mumbai City Hall, or MCH, have now been downgraded from the banned tier to the restricted tier. Rumour Mill is a very interesting one, and I have to say I did not see that coming. I don't know. This card was very widely hated for a reason, and it wasn't because of Princess Space Kitten itself. This card is nasty. This card was an abomination of card design, and I'm not going to excuse that here. It remains a poorly designed card, and really, if I had a choice, I would redesign Rumour Mill along with Film Critic and Employee Strike. But I bring those cards up because even though this was poor design, in the context of building a competitive deck, it actually offers more choices for the runner. So you're building your deck and you're like, there are some core cards that my current deck can't deal with, but I have a free restricted slot. I can go most wanted list shopping. Instead of buying an economy card, as mentioned in the Tapworm section, I'm gonna buy a hate card. If the card I'm worrying about is a corporate agenda, you know, like those new 5/3s coming out, I'm gonna slot Film Critic. Or if I'm worried about those new powerful identities that are coming up this cycle, well, how about Employee Strike to shut them down? Or if there are some powerful corp assets and upgrades that I'm worried about, maybe it's MC Austerity Policy or Brian Stinson, well, Rumour Mill now gives me an option to deal with those nasty corp cards that otherwise have very little answers themselves. So Rumour Mill fills that niche, and it's really not as devastating as it used to be when it was legal back then, simply because Jackson Howard no longer exists and Caprice Nisei, well, it's no longer there either. So yeah, Glacier decks now, you would think they rely on cards like Ginger City Grid, which are not affected by Rumour Mill either. So I suppose decks may have more outs against Rumour Mill nowadays, and it's no longer, going to be something that dominates the meta as much as it used to. In fact, if anything, I personally believe Film Critics on a higher power level as a hate card than Rumour Mill is right now. But details aside, again, I'm not trying to justify the fact that Rumour Mill was an abomination of a design. At the end of the day, I don't like that card, but, well, now that they've taken it off the most wanted list, it gives runners more choice in terms of shopping for the hate cards. Mumbai City Hall is an interesting one. I think it's quite interesting that they actually pulled it down to the restricted list, because doing this does absolutely nothing. If you think about it, Mumbai City Hall was powerful, firstly because of its efficiency, of course, but also because of its ability to pull out big cards like Mumbai Temple and Museum of History unimpeded, with basically no runner counterplay available. As the corp, if you draw Mumbai City Hall, you just install it and click twice for the assets of your choice, and the runner can't really react to that. Now that's different because it shares the restricted list with said cards, Mumbai Temple and Museum of History. So you can't pull those cards because having both cards in your deck is illegal. You can't have City Hall in the same deck as Mumbai Temple or History. So really the only synergies remaining are Consulting Visit, which is a pretty nice synergy, allowing you to tutor any event from your deck. If not for the fact that the most broken way to abuse this is to simply run one consulting visit and to keep recurring the consulting visit with Whampoa or Museum of History, both of which are also on the restricted list. So if you are trying to do this one-off consulting visit nonsense, well, you won't have the recursion needed to keep the consulting visit in your deck. You play the consulting visit with Mumbai City Hall, it goes in your bin, and it stays in the bin. You can't play it from the bin with Mumbai City Hall. So you can't simply have your events on tap all the time. If you're playing City Hall, you're sacrificing, sorry, pardon my pronunciation, sacrificing recursion for efficiency in Mumbai City Hall. And finally, well, the best use case I can think of now that Mumbai City Hall is off the ban list is to stick a bunch of Mumbai Virtual Tours and G's Model Baroids on the table. That's about as good as it gets, and if you can find a deck that can utilize that to its fullest, well, good for you. Go play that Mumbai City Hall. You can't play any other restricted cards from the co-op side anyway. So yeah, that's basically it for this revision of the Most Wanted list. I don't really have anything else to say about those other cards that are on the list. They can stay where they are. Overall, I'm pretty satisfied with the list. And hopefully the meta will continue growing healthier as Michael Box and his team continue monitoring the state of competitive Netrunner. Again, if you are a bit upset that your combos or certain decks are now gone because of the restricted or banned list, especially, you know, I've heard that there was a player that wanted to try some Violet level clearance shenanigans, and they were very bummed that they are now not allowed to do it in a competitive environment. Well, you can still bring that to, you know, your local meetup or play it on the kitchen table. No one's stopping you from doing that. At the end of the day, it's only for the better of the competitive environment that these cards are where they are on the list. So hope you found this interesting. What do you think about the new Most Wanted list? Share your thoughts in the comment section. I'm sure everyone would love to hear it. Until then, as always, thanks for watching and happy net running. I'll see you on Saturday for the next video. Goodbye.